And here we go. Hello. It is currently just after 8 o'clock in the evening on September 3rd, 2024. For the few individuals that are following as far as all this goes, it's been a couple of weeks since my last one. I wish that I could, in anything resembling good faith, call my delay in getting another one of these posted. I wish that I could, in good faith, call that the fault of Project 2025. Alas, I cannot. For as nauseating as that is, it's not enough to actually stop me from sitting down and doing any of this. But sad fact of the matter is, my day job. I'm not going to go into what my day job is. It's in IT. And this is just a peak period in the year for us. And the last couple of weeks have been a hellscape. It has been very painfully busy. I've been very much mentally wiped out, pretty much on a daily basis. But after a good weekend and excellent start to this week, I'm in a lot better space mentally, and I've actually got some energy. So, of course, after attending to myself, because it is very important, always tend to your mental health first and foremost. Same rule as like you're flying in an airplane. You know, oxygen mask drop down, get yourself taken care of first. If you're not taking care of yourself, you can't even begin to think about taking care of somebody else. Well, you know, take care of myself first. I got that all done. And the first thing I do after that, all right, let's get this recording out. Because, yes. And unlike doing Project 2025, this is one that I actually really want to do. Now, for the, I don't know how many, I'd have to go look at the statistics, but I'm assuming for the few of you that chewed through the entire last recording for Some Idiot Reads, I'm done with Project 2025. I'm not going to sit and keep trying to chew through that. That was extraordinarily painful. And there's something to be said for having taken the time to go through something like that. I got enough of you to satisfy my own curiosity of, is this as bad as I had been led to believe? And yes, it is. Probably worse by how things were laid out. That also being said, there's been plenty of different websites, organizations, groups that have done very good deep dives, summarizations, and all of them have both way more practical knowledge in those fields and more time and more resources to thoroughly deep dive through something like that. So rather than continue to labor myself away on reading that thing, I'm going to move on to something else. I'm still trying to sort through what exactly I'm going to wind up reading as things go forward. I'm really enjoying the format of just, at least for this, just reading different things. You know, chewing through stuff, whatever catches my attention. I don't know if there's going to be a specific pattern to it, other than me making commentary as I read through things. So, you know, we'll see how that goes. And either it will be entertaining, which I sincerely hope to be the case. I don't really want to waste anybody's time here, except maybe my own. But, you know, that's a Tuesday. Wait, it is a Tuesday. Anyway, I don't really need to waste anybody's time. But I had a thought I was going through. I don't remember. Also, just like random thing here, just pointing this out. So, I just got myself like this weekend. This is a silly thing. So, hi, I have long hair, and I've had for several years just some really nice little hair ties that I've gotten from a booth at a Renaissance festival. And like, it's like, I think you can see this sort of, right? Yeah, there we go. So like, little like, it's basically just like your standard elastic hair tie, just with some nice elaborate yarn work on it and a little bit of beads at the end. I thought they were cool. I like wearing those things around. It's one of those things like I feel pretty with that. And like over the weekend, I got myself one in orange, which I thought was really neat. I didn't have an orange one. I've got plenty of other more moderate, or not moderate, muted colors, like gray, red, just, very chill. But then I also saw this, and like, I don't know how well you can see. Crap. Okay, wait, maybe if can I, no? There we go. I don't know. It's just a bunch of different colors. I think it's really cool. That was just random. It caught my attention. Just kind of ooh shiny. However, at this point, we are now, 5 minutes, 6 minutes in. I'm not going to keep chewing up time for you guys. What do I have on deck tonight? Tonight, this is one that actually I've been thinking about probably since the second one of Project 2025 that I did, that I really want to sit down and do. So, there's a very good buddy of mine, as you can see here on the screen, kind of. Maybe if I move this over here, I really hope that'll, there we go. Yeah. Okay. So, as you can see, individual, Coyote Wallace. He is a very dear friend of mine. Absolutely love this guy. This gentleman puts his nose to the grindstone, has done so for all of the years that I have known him. I don't think I can really even realistically say he puts his nose to the grindstone. He is repeatedly headbutting the grindstone and calling it his bitch. Because that's just the way he operates. The dude does not stop. He just keeps plugging away. And honestly, one thing I really respect the hell out of with this gentleman is he constantly and consistently tries to put good out into the world. He is, and I say this without any hyperbole or exaggeration, he is genuinely one of the kinder people that I know in this world, especially given the amount of bullshit he's had to actually face in life. I have been lucky enough to be aware of some degree of the crap that he has had to deal with over the course of his life, and there's been quite a bit. And yet, through that, he still consistently tries to chase his dreams, and honestly, succeeds pretty damn well from where I'm sitting at. He's chasing his dreams. He's trying to keep positive outlook out there. He's still got fire. The dude is hard as fucking nails, and honestly, I myself, I've not been necessarily the best person as far as it goes with like contact, maintaining contact. Just a lot of personal shit has gone on over the last couple of years. He and I have talked about that sort of a thing. But I have never once had anything but amazing things to say about this guy and his work. And this is on medium.com. As you can see again, Coyote Wallace, blep, right there. He does a series that he refers to as Dispatches from Appalachia. He himself lives in Appalachia. The dude's from coal country. He is out there. I don't see this that's in no bad way. It's just he is in the thick of Appalachia in and of itself. I hope I'm saying that right. Appalachia? No, it's not Appalachia. No, it's not that. It's not Appalachia. Or is it Appalachia? Is it Appalachia? Joey, yell at me. Just yell at me at some point. Let me know how that goes, dude. Anyway, point is, Appalachia. Hold on. Wait, no. Now this is going to bother me. Hold on. Let me look this up. Appalachia. Appalachia pronunciation. That's Appalachian. No, I need Appalachia. Appalachia. Academic pronunciation comes in the Appalachia tribe. Southern is Appalachia. Okay. Let me see here. Appalachia is the north. Appalachia is the south. Okay. So it doesn't matter? Appalachia. Appalachia. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent with this. Jesus. Okay. Anyway. So he lives out in Appalachia. He absolutely knows what he's talking about with this, and he gives a really interesting perspective on a lot of things. I have read through some of his dispatches. I was not able to really keep up on them as much as I would have preferred, because when he had a lot of these, well, I think when he started these up, I was going through a pretty gnarly space. So I did not get to keep up on these, and I figure, I'm getting to kill two birds with, well, actually I'm killing several birds with one stone here. I am not only getting to catch up on these myself, which is awesome. I'm happy for that. I'm also able to, kind of like shine a little bit extra light on this guy, and the amazing work that he has here. In addition to this, and I will be putting this into the video description so that it is available. He also has a book coming out here soon. I want to double check, because I think he said about it earlier today. Yes. So he is being published by Nightmare Press, which I am so woefully unprepared for this. Jesus. Looking at the Facebook page for Nightmare Press, they advertise themselves as a publisher of multiple fiction genres and paranormal nonfiction. They have some amazing books that look out here. Let's see what we got. As of the 23rd, Chance and Hell and Ava Edison Heist by Marcus Cook. That looks interesting. What else we got here? Okay, that's another one for the Ava Edison Heist. Scroll down through the Facebook. The Vermin Sleep. That's just a really cool name. Okay. They look as though they have a wide array of different books. I definitely need to look into their catalog more, as I have cash available and at my disposal. But I would be lying if I said the one that I am most looking forward to that is going to be coming out in the near future is one also by Mr. Wallace here. That is... Come on, Jesus. Okay. I want to make sure I get the full name of the title correct here. American Mystic, The Life, Death, and Rebirth of Jimmy Wonderful. That is coming out here soon from Nightmare Press. I highly recommend checking it out. I have been able to read... I know I read some of the work when he had originally started on it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. If you like the feel of gonzo journalism and, I'm trying to think what's a good way to phrase this. Okay, so that, Netflix show Bright, or the Netflix movie Bright that came out, it was kind of but, the concept sounded cool, where it's okay, fantasy in the modern day. There's kind of that going on, but it's with Hunter S. Thompson and gonzo journalism sort of take. It's really cool. I really enjoyed everything that I've read for it, snippets that Coyote's posted. I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and that when that actually hits print, I am 1000% buying a copy of that. I'm going to continue to push that off onto people because it's honestly a really cool book. I like what I've seen of it. I want to read it cover to cover. And I want to see more sales. So, Jesus, we're already 15 minutes in, and I'm still fucking rambling. If you, check it out. Check out Nightmare Press. Keep an eye peeled for the posting of American Mystic, and check that out. Get yourself a copy. If you like it, share it with your friends. I'm going to move on to what I'm doing here. So what I wanted to do here is just take some time, again, read through some of these dispatches and get going on this. So rather than continue to find myself into another point of rambling, I'm just going to start. I went through, I grabbed a couple that I have read, and others that seem like, no, let's roll with this. So what we're going to start with is Dirtbikes, The Folly of Youth, and a River of Shit by Coyote Wallace, a Dispatches from Appalachia tale. Now this right here is not actually the river they faced, and in the context of the story, as you will see here shortly, it was not actually mud. The year of my 13th birthday, I came to know the greatest joy that an Appalachian boy can know between the owning of their first dog and the first time he kisses a pretty girl. The ownership of our first dirt bikes, and the keys to our own first taste of freedom. What follows is the tale of not only myself and two of the best, and sometimes worse, friends that a boy could have growing up poor, on the wrong side of the tracks, and with precious little parental supervision. A tale of the terminally fast, the foolishly young, and the wild ways in which we taxed our guardian angels on a regular basis. The names have been changed to protect the not-so-innocent, but the details and the story itself remain true. God help us all. I was the last kid in my neighborhood to get a dirt bike or an ATV. Isn't that some rotten luck? By the time of my 13th birthday, both of my best friends had, despite the oftentimes ugly poverty we lived in, had managed to purchase their own second-hand fixer-uppers with the help of their fathers, restored them to working order. Fathers or father? I think it's just father. Okay, my bad. My mother, however, had remained firm for her inscrutable, to a young coyote at least, reluctance, citing, of course, the fact that I would surely meet my untimely death upon such a high-speed, reckless contraption. My mother had worked as an ER nurse in her youth, and the sights she had seen there, gruesome as they were, colored her view of such activities. She was a woman of small stature and slight build, but she made up for it in a fiery determination with anything she threw herself at. Once those flames flickered behind her light green eyes, you had two choices. Concede your ground, or risk the fury of an Appalachian woman who would have gladly cussed the balls off Satan himself had he crossed her. When she saw my end, splattered and smeared across the grill of a coal truck, or wrapped around a tree, where she saw my end, splattered and smeared across the grill of a coal truck, or wrapped around a tree, I saw only the wild possibility of freedom, and the infinite amount of fun to be had roaming the same mountains, where generations of young Appalachians had fought, explored, roamed, and romped. There was no getting around Mom, though. She'd birthed me into this world, and was determined to see that I did not take myself out of it prematurely. Unfortunately for her sweet motherly intentions, my friends had plenty of room on the back, and someone had to hold the often pilfered stashes of half-pints of whiskey, stolen cartons of cigarettes, and other assorted plunders of misspent youth, now didn't they? It's worth pausing now to introduce the rest of our beloved cast to you, my dear coyote comrades. A set of brothers who were so differently constructed in everything from their builds and character to the very personalities and taste that had one not known they were kin, it might well have never been suspected at all. The goddamn Lee brothers. You may hear my cat in the background. This is going to be a running thing. Jacob Lee was 6 months to the day younger than myself, and had been seemingly blessed by genetics with every advantage one could want. He was handsome, muscular, an all-star athlete in every sport he ever attempted, and would later go on to play Ironman football for a high school team and made it all look easy. A blonde-haired, blue-eyed, often temperamental fury that had no use at all for what my mother would have called book smarts, but could have fought a buzzsaw to a standstill. If our little group had a leader, it was him. Jacob's primary advisory in all things was his older brother, Robbie Jean, Lee. Robbie Jean was neither muscular, nor handsome, nor a star athlete in any sport I had known of. He was, however, possessed with an innate talent for not only getting us into all manner of trouble, but somehow getting us all out of the same trouble that he'd gotten us into. If Jacob or myself came up with an idea, it was Robbie who then came up with the way to make it happen. Sometimes for the better, often for the worst. Where was I? Oh, wait, no, sorry. Where was I? The skinny kid... Wait. Okay, I can do this. Sigh, you can read. Where was I? The skinny kid with glasses, curly hair, and too much time with his nose in books about wizards and fairies and ghosts? I was on the back of Robbie Jean's ATV 200 Polaris ATV, or the back of the cobbled mutt of a racing dirt bike that Jacob's father had rebuilt for him, holding on for dear life and often cursing the very gods above at the existence of tree-spanning spiderwebs, flying beetles, and low-hanging vines of the thick, wicked briars. I want to do a quick comment, too. I did not grow up in Appalachia. I grew up down on the Gulf Coast. But honestly, the point of tree-spanning spiderwebs, dude, there was a thing, like, growing up down where I did on the Panhandle. We had what we called banana spiders. I don't know if that's actually, like, an appropriate term for them. Like, if that's one that's commonly used, that's what we call them. Golden orb weavers. And these things would build titanic webs. Like, we had one that was on the eaves of our house, going all the way up to the upper branches of an extremely tall pine tree. And we had, like, I counted one year, we had 13 of these around our entire house. When my parents were not home, like, I'd get home from school, if my parents weren't home, it wasn't a big deal. Like, the front door was locked, but I could always go around to the backyard, jump down a small hill, then go ahead and get my way back up into the house. The back door was kept unlocked. It was fine. But that summer, when there were like 13 of these things, it was like a James Bond film, dodging your way through just laser beams all over the place. They were all over and just catching everything. Random little anecdote, not much else to add to that. Just that popped to mind with like tree spanning spider webs. The first summer, roaming the mountains and back trails, hitting out often as soon as we came home and before our parents could arrive to stop us, we felt like wild outlaws who had no use for helmets, slowing down, or the woefully outclassed deputies that would sometimes chase us when we dallied too long near one of the main roads. Our parents couldn't have done anything with us if they tried, and the law, in those days at least, would never chase us further than the mountain roads where the pavement ended. Those memories are some of the best of my life, and I will cherish them always. Those first tastes of freedom, as sweet as honeysuckle and thrilling in their sheer newness. Then, near the end of that summer, when days were once more first beginning to lose their warmth, we met our match. Our exploits often took us from one small cluster of homes to another, and these varied hollows were always separated by spaces as large as 5 to 20 miles at a time. The police would watch the main roads, of course, and while we could escape them easily enough when we were near home, there was always the chance they would catch us on a straight and have us. Thus, we stuck to the back roads, and often cut makeshift paths through the large expanses of forest, hills, and open lots that made up multiple properties. On this day, we decided to blaze a new trail along the tracks running towards this little neck of the woods called Tram. Our reasons for going out have been lost to me now. Whether we were courting girls or just out hell raising is lost to the mist of my own memory, but I do know that we were making surprisingly good time. The land was mostly flat, unlike our usual paths we took to reach Tram, which required a lengthy ride across a mountain. And aside from some sparse trees and the occasional no trespassing sign, we believed ourselves quite ingenious for discovering this route. We came to what, at the time, was simply known as Joe's Field, a large, open space of land with chest-high grass and muddy but firm enough soil that separated two strips of scraggly trees that looked like eldritch worms rising up out of the ground during a hard rain. They were ugly trees, and the field itself wasn't much to look at, the sort of place where copperheads would have hunted frogs and a careless boy might twist or snap his ankle. Yet the wind was on our backs, urging us on. That detail about the wind will be very important in a moment. Jacob, ever in the lead on his rebuilt racing bike, came to a screeching halt out in front of us, and his brother locked up the brakes so quickly that I nearly found myself slung off the side. "Boys, look at that," Jacob nodded towards the center of the field. I was pulling myself back upright when I saw it, but Robbie Jean summed it up well enough. Oh, now that's some mud. God damn, it must be runoff from coal that falls on the tracks. Look how fucking black it is, like a well digger's asshole, Robbie Jean said. And because he was older and there was a nearby train track, this seemed plausible enough. Sure. There, cutting through the center of the field, was what looked like a shallow river that was in the first stages of going dry. The muck and mud was as black as spilled ink. It had to be nearly 15 feet wide, and it divided the field neatly in two. We could go around it, but that would have meant going back the way we came and cutting onto the train tracks or the main road. Neither were favorable prospects. Guys, I don't think we can, cross that, you know? I tentatively floated the idea out there. Both of them looked at me like I had grown a second head. Buddy, son, ain't no goddamn way I can't get across no fucking big mud puddle. Long as it's deep enough to long as it ain't deep enough to drown the engine out, I can take this thing anywhere I need to go. Fuck, boys, just gotta hit it fast enough, Jacob said as he began to cut the small circle he needed to hit it with speed. Now, we'd all been mudding before, and to be fair, while the mud was dark, we'd crossed streams and creeks and hit all manner of worse terrain than this already. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed plausible Jacob was going to pull this off. Remember, don't let up. You'll have to hold it all the way open, Robbie Jean called out to him. Jacob paused, revved the engine one final time, and shot forward like a bolt. His body leaned forward over the handlebars, and his legs tensed to hold him just slightly aloft of the seat itself. Faster, faster, and faster. He hit the field, grass whipping around him, and for a moment I felt a certain blind panic that somewhere in all that tall grass was going to be an upturned log or a dead tree, and he'd kill himself, or the bike would slide out under him. Neither of those things happened, though. He only kept building up speed, momentum gathering, wild-eyed and magnificently assured of his victory. Faster, faster, faster. He hit his target like a lightning bolt, and all around him black muck and water spewed into the air, a redneck Moses parting a filthy sea using a flea market death machine, and to our amazement, despite Robbie Jean's warnings, he began to slow. The engine revved up, and it almost appeared to be sinking. The angles seemed wrong, and he kept going slower and slower, and we watched as he rose up on the pegs of the bike, rocking furiously forward as if his very life depended on it. Must have thrown the chain, Robbie Jean offered. Seemed probable enough, but why doesn't he put his feet down? Ain't he just going to blow the motor up if the chain is off and he's laying on the gas like that? Jacob settled it for us when he looked back at us and there were tears in his eyes. It's shit. It's goddamn shit, boys. Shit, Jacob screamed at the top of his lungs. The wind shifted. God had turned away from us and left us forsaken for the sin of youthful pride. A brief aside here. In the hills of eastern Kentucky, it was once quite common for the citizenry to utterly eschew the little niceties of civilization. There are those who, either through poverty or through a simple dose of not caring, chose to create outlaw septic systems. These outlaw systems often funnel human waste into remote areas on large properties or overgrown areas, places where it's not likely to be noticed or stumbled upon by the underpaid and understaffed state inspectors. This, you see, was an actual river of shit that our friend had found himself stuck in the middle of. Jacob was the toughest kid I know, and he wept like a baby when the bike gave its last gasp and he had to put his feet down in order to maintain his balance. The smell must have been murdering him now the smell that must have been murdering him was now choking us. There are no words. If you want to know what that smell was like, then the only thing I can tell you is to go outside, put your head inside your own car door, and slam it shut. Twice. That is the only conceivable way you could conjure the amount of self-hate, disgust, and mental collapse the assailing stench brought with it. Boys, it's stuck. I can't get it loose, Jacob cried out before succumbing to a fit of dry heaving. We'll never get that thing out of here. God damn it. We're going to have to get y'all's dad or something, I told Robbie Jean, but one look at him, and I knew we wouldn't be so lucky. Nah, son. Ain't telling him he's stuck in shit. Open up the compartment under the back rack and see if that leash is still there, Robbie Jean told me. I did. It was. The leash had been a staple of Robbie Jean's gear for the last week and a half. There was a fine coonhound that had been roaming free in our neighborhood, but it eluded capture thus far. The leash itself was probably 8 to 9 feet long and made of a steel chain with a clasping head for securing it to collars. Hold on, I got an idea. Just stay there, Robbie Jean called over to his brother. Jacob agreed. He wouldn't abandon the bike, and his options for leaving weren't exactly plentiful, but he looked about like you'd expect a kid who was shin-deep in human shit to look. Miserable. We circled around, as I had hoped we'd do the first time, and came around on the other side of the shit river. Robbie Jean turned the ATV around and put it in reverse so that we could back up to the edge of this literal environmental disaster, and I, by virtue of being the idiot on the back, could toss him the leash. Again, the smell. I cannot say for certain, but I have it on good authority that Satan himself claims that only Rupert Murdoch's soul smells worse. I tossed Jacob the leash, and by this time the bike had sank almost down to its engine in the filth and was still sinking. Jacob hooked the leash to the front of his bike beneath the handlebars and tossed the other end back to me. I fastened my end to the back rack of the ATV. Robbie Jean's plan was simple. We were to count down from 5 and then hit the gas at the same time, and he should just come right out of there, and presumably we will never speak of this again. We began the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The ATV tore the dirt bike right out of the ground, flipped it ass over tea kettle, and dragged it, and Jacob, through the sort of awfulness that Morgan Freeman's Red in The Shawshank Redemption doesn't even want to think about. You're dragging him! You're dragging him! Jesus Christ almighty! Fuck, you're dragging him! I shouted in Robbie Jean's ear, and he slammed on the brakes. We looked back. Jacob had popped up, and there he stood, silhouetted against the setting sun. Our fearless leader with his blonde hair and blue eyes. The toughest kid in our neighborhood. He looked almost like something out of a sports painting, his face turned up to the sky, and his hands at the low of his back. Like a professional quarterback who had just taken a bone-jarring sack, but was too goddamn noble to be broken by it, and was about to win the whole thing in the fourth quarter. Then he turned to look at us fully. It was as if he had been divided perfectly down the middle, with a layer of shit. His blonde hair was matted and stuck, in a wild, plastered upward slick. His blue eye on that side standing out so vividly it was almost startling. He looked like he'd been interrupted halfway through disguising himself from the predator's efforts to hunt him down for sport. I will kill you both if you ever tell anyone, boys. I swear to God I will. He shouted at us with a fury that was decidedly little kid-like. We swore we wouldn't, and that lasted until the next day. No one was killed for it. Thankfully, once we got older, everyone had a good laugh about it. The rest of our journeys, we stuck to familiar paths and known mountain roads that were passed down from generation to generation of young hellraisers and malcontents. Maybe that's sort of the lesson. You can blaze your own path, and that's well and good. But be mindful in your journeys of having eyes that are bigger than your stomach, or you just might find yourself stuck in a river of shit and having to drive home downwind of your friends. And that is it for the first one here. Dirtbikes, The Folly of Youth, and a River of Shit. The reason I wanted to start with this one is because I distinctly remember him telling me about this well before he had actually ever even written this article. I swear this was a story he told me about. It is the exact sort of thing that I can 1000% see happening. And just, to borrow the phrasing being used, backwoods hell raising. I absolutely can see it. And there's an authenticity to the writing, and to just the pacing and the storytelling that I don't really know how to succinctly put it, but there is a way in which, in my experience, there's a way in which stories can be told not in a way that makes them larger than life, in any kind of like exaggeratory sense, but in a way that highlights the right areas to make a story feel more engaging and feel larger. And there's a way in which people can tell those stories and illustrate that to my ear at least, you read it or you hear it and it's like, no, that's entirely true. Another example that I've commonly referred to for this exact same principle is Bert Kreischer, the Machine, the guy that inspired frickin' Van Wilder. The way he tells his stories, it's got that same sort of framing. This is actually a conversation I had with my boss earlier today, of all things, like framing stories. It's one thing to go ahead and just tell a story like, yeah, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. But it's another thing entirely to do, and I'm just going to scroll random points. Adding that detail about the wind will be very important in a moment. It's adding little touches like that, or the fact of like, at the very beginning, giving that description of Jacob. Yes, Jacob. Giving that description of Jacob, like, okay. But then at the very end, describing him like Two-Face, coated in shit on one side and angelic on the other. That structuring of a narrative is just, chef kiss. I love it. Superbly done. I absolutely adore this article. This feels kind of like, this has the same sort of element as like, the movie Sandlot. It has that same sort of feel of a bygone era and the hilarious escapades of youth. Absolutely love it. So, let's see. The next one I was going to do here, I believe these were not the first ones that he did. But I did see that this is a 3-parter. I want to say I read part of this at one point. April 25th, 2023. I almost certainly read at least one part of this. But I was going through some crap at the time, so this will be a nice revisiting. All right. Poverty, Despair, and the Manufacture of Human Cogs, Part 1. It was a Thursday, and I was fantasizing about Donald J. Trump being torn to shreds by a pack of rabid, and yet possibly okay, wait, hold on. I gotta start this over. It was a Thursday, and I was fantasizing about Donald J. Trump being torn to shreds by a pack of rabid, and yet possibly amorous wolverines, when I first caught wind of the story dashing through my social media feeds like a rabbit running through high grass. As is the case with all good stories and plump rabbits, it was being pursued by hungry hounds, writers and journalists like myself, to those of you who are suffering from seasonal metaphor allergies, who thought they knew the zig and the zag of their prey. These hounds, chasing the rabbit, bay out, and when they do, their unique cry sounds a bit like this. The Appalachian Regional Commission, underscored, reports that Kentucky has the highest rate of poverty in the country. Non-Appalachian states report a poverty rate of 15.6%, while in Appalachia, that number climbs significantly to 19.7% the moment one crosses into mountainous territory. Or, the Appalachian Census Bureau, underlined, finds that eastern Kentucky counties rank among the nation's poorest and most economically disenfranchised. The counties of Bell, Harlan, and McCreary rank among the nation's 5 poorest, with a median income that had actually dropped by $4,000 in the 5-year span researched. The median income for eastern Kentucky ranges, on average, from $19,000 to just $24,500, making all those declines all the more alarming. Or, the ADA National Center on Disability, also underscored, finds that eastern Kentucky has, on average, a disability rate of just over 11.5% in each of its regions. The state total hovers around 17.2%, while the rest of the United States holds firm at a 12.5% disability rate. On the heels of those baying hounds is always the big question, stumbling behind them and holding on tight to the leash. The baying of the hounds changes up from time to time with the breed and nature of the dog itself, but the big question is always the same. A steady constant that, when observed from the front porches and dark hollows of East Kentucky, is met with a tired laugh and a knowing grin. Why does generational poverty hold such a tight grip on the small towns and the people who make their lives in the shadows of mountains that are older than the sea? The answer will never be found within the statistics, and I do not believe that it may successfully be hunted by those who observe from the outside. This is not a matter of fault for the hunting dogs who do their best, nor is it even a lacking of any quality to the big question. Rather, it is simply the truth that such a rabbit has not grown plump by being easily caught by hounds that have only a passing familiarity with the terrain. This is coyote work, and if one wishes to catch the rabbit, they must know where he makes his burrow. Hold on tight. The narrative is about to get a little weird. Now, for anyone that may just be listening at the moment, what comes next is a picture of a street that is commented, yes, this was our street. And, God, that takes me way back. Very different terrain, but I definitely, there's a vibe to that picture that takes me back to my own childhood. Feeling it, dude. Header. Games that stupid rednecks play. The first time that I glimpsed the rabbit, I was 11 chasing 12, and I had been recruited, along with the other boys in the neighborhood, for a game I'd never heard of. I was 4 years removed from the divorce that had split my parents apart and cast my mother and myself down below the poverty line. My mother worked very hard to make sure I didn't notice, but this itself was a self-defeating act. I hardly ever saw her home without her being dead tired from work. This meant, throughout the day, I was mostly left to my own devices. The game was called Hide and Go Switch. Now, before we get to the rules or explanations, it's worth pointing out that my neighborhood, the place where I learned about the nature of this world, was a small unincorporated boil of land that was separated from the larger townships of Prestonsburg and Pikeville by a stretch of ugly railroad used for the hauling of waste and washed coal. The wrong side of the tracks, if it had ever existed. There were no bus stops, there was no fire department, there were no street lights, and the 10-room brick building that had been our school was torn down to make room for a used car lot. The local neighborhood kids were every bit as motley and rough around the edges as you can imagine. My two best friends, Jacob and Robbie Joe Lee, were not exempt from the common thread that bound us all together. Their father had been a mine worker who had been nearly crushed and now did his best to make a living breeding and selling chickens. My mother took work in a honky-tonk bar, and another set of brothers, Johnny Wads, even our nicknames were poor, and his brother Arnold were the product of an alcoholic father, himself a disabled miner, who collected a check while their mother took part-time work as a custodian at the local high school. We had nothing. None of us did. All that we had was the empty time left to us by overworked parents and days warned by the golden sun of our youth. The game had been proposed to us by an elderly gentleman by the name of Duke Kidd, spelled with 2 Ds. Duke had been something of a mythical figure in our neighborhood, a grizzled old knot of a man who had lost most of his fingers on his right hand working for the railroad, and who caught rattlesnakes, copperheads, and other venomous serpents for the purpose of selling them without the use of any modern equipment at all. Just a burlap sack, a cooler, and whatever sticks or branches were nearby. We've been kicking around the neighborhood like a wild band of outlaws, an unseemly and often unwashed troop of juvenile brigands on bicycles that were always cobbled together, and, in the case of Johnny Wad, had no brakes, because the one basketball that was shared among us had burst. This was a death sentence for any fun we might have had for at least a week out of our summer as meager allowances were gathered. This time frame might be cut in half, however, by way of what we today call resource allocation, or, as we called it then, thieving some other kid's goddamn basketball. We were young, bored, and with a stolen half-pack of Virginia Slims from my grandmother, on the prowl for trouble. The sort of kids that made the rare UPS truck that visited our neighborhood drive a little faster after dropping off the package for fear he'd find a potato crammed into the exhaust pipe as penance for our tarrying too long. We weren't bad kids, or maybe we were, but we were definitely at our worst when we were bored. We were simply roaming down the center of the small, one-lane road that ran through our neighborhood when Duke called out to us. "What in the hell you youngins doing out on the road? Go play ball or something out here. Go on, get on out from the road." I really hope that I didn't just, butcher that. There's every possibility I'm going to get an earful for that one. That was me as an aside. Duke snarled up at us from his resting place on a double-stacked milk crate by the front porch of his house at the end of the lane. Translation: "What are you fine young gentlemen doing playing at the end of the road? Would you not be happier if, instead, you partook of a rousing game of basketball instead? The road is not safe for dallying, and you should hasten yourselves home to your mothers." Duke seemed almost a caricature of the Appalachian mountain man, with his thick white beard and face like the dried riverbeds of some ancient desert. Not tall, but stockily built, and it was clear that before work had hobbled the use of one of his hands, it had hardened him in his own youth. We all had a sort of mystified respect for him, part fear and part awe. Enough that we stopped our rambling horde in the midst of the street beneath the hot sun and considered his advice. Jacob, ever our fearless leader, hitched one elbow up onto the handlebars of his bicycle, and, with a Virginia Slim tucked behind his ear, regarded the old man the way a wary dog might look upon a stranger's outstretched hand. He tilted his chin up and asked, responding with the eloquence for which he was well known. "Ball's busted, buddy son," Jacob told him plainly enough. "Fuck we supposed to do, old man?" Johnny Wad drawled almost vacantly. Jacob and Robbie Joe were my best friends, but the Robinson brothers were an entirely different breed from us. Always a little meaner, always a little leaner, and served as our makeshift neighborhood rivals. Without a basketball or any form of diversion, it was only a matter of time before we fell to fighting or feuding over some otherwise trivial matter. They thought of us as spoiled, and there was nothing worse that you could call a poor kid than spoiled. Duke burst into a fit of laughter at our see-through surliness, his mouth a cavern of crooked and missing teeth. After the fit of laughter had subsided somewhat, and he'd wiped his mouth across the back of his hand, he shook his head. "Yins don't need no ball to play to have fun. Lord's sake, play tag or hide and seek or something. Build a tree fort." Duke bawled at us as he ambled up off his milk crates, supporting himself with a hand against the railing of his porch. Translation: "You fine young gentlemen do not need a basketball to pursue a rousing good time. You could play tag, or hide and seek, or perhaps even lend your youthful enthusiasm towards the construction of some sort of arboreal fortification." "Got no wood for a fort," Robbie Joe pointed out. "Ain't got no hammers or nails either," I piped up from the back. Jacob met Duke's ancient gaze and stated, very simply and once more, with an eloquence that would have marked him as a generational poet under different circumstances, "Tags for pussies and babies, buddy son," he stated, with all the surliness that a kid on a 10-speed bike can manage. This provoked another guffaw from Duke, and when it too had died down, he threw us a toothless grin. "What there about hide the swish? Need no money for that in there." Translation: "Have you young gentlemen ever heard of a game called hide-and-go-switch?" Our merry band of misfits, malcontents, and juvenile delinquents shared a quick glance among each other. The wealthy kids of Pikeville had parks and after-school activities. They had summer programs and playgrounds, or parents that took them on vacation to places like Disney World, or even just the mall in Huntington. We had nothing. Nothing but the hot sun at our back, several hours before any sign of a parental figure would be seen, and a newly piqued curiosity. The materials needed for a game of hide-and-go-switch are remarkably easy to come by in rural Appalachia. First, you need a good-sized field, preferably one that isn't overburdened with obstacles. There were plenty of rural abandoned lots around our little slice of the poverty pie, and the one we'd settled on had only the bare minimum amount of broken bottles and discarded tin cans, and was framed by 2 strands of rusty barbed wire. The second thing you need is a good long switch. For those of you who are not raised in rural America and have never had the pleasure of taking a switch whipping, allow me to clarify. A switch typically used for the enforcement of corporal discipline to unruly Appalachian children, is a thin but durable branch cut from a tree. The ideal length should be between 3 and 4 feet long, and it should have a thickness of no greater than your thumb at one end and taper at the next. Part of the punishment, for those unfortunate souls who knew, was the actual cutting of the switch. You had to go out and find your own, and any kid who taught himself clever by picking a frail branch was sure to be whipped twice as a result. All of us were familiar with the switch, and the one we cut was far more menacing than those our parents may have used on us. And what follows is a picture of, speaking as an individual who is also familiar with switches. Yeah, no, that's a switch branch. Yeah. Side note, we didn't, I think on my case, because the switches wound up becoming in short supply at my home, just because with the pine trees, the branches were way up high. My dad actually wound up taking 2, like, those really cheap fly swatters with, like, the little, like, wire bands. Like, it wasn't even hard plastic. It was just, like, a looped thing of wire and, like, a plastic swatter. He took 2 of those and just electrical taped them together. That was as painful as any switch. And it wouldn't break. You didn't have to get rid of it. And it had its own kind of thing to it. It had a horrifying majesty. Anyway, that's it. That's all you need. A stick, a field. That's all we got. The rules of the game, as explained to us by a strange old man who caught rattlesnakes for fun, was simple enough. One person hides the switch while the others turn their back. Then they choose a base, or a safety, a point where you can touch and be, at least temporarily, out of the game. Once the switch is hidden, a countdown is given, and once it concludes, all participants engage in a mad search for the switch. Once found, the kid with the switch may merrily beat the hell out of any other kid he can catch that is not touching base. That's it. That's all the rules. You want to hit your best friend with a flying shoulder check like your name is Lawrence Goddamn Taylor? Fine. Bloody a nose with a quick, sharp elbow as if you were Dennis Rodman bringing down a rebound? You bet. If a kid fell while being chased, he was whipped until he stood back up and ran to base. No adults, no supervision, no notion at all about how insane we must all have been to even contemplate such a game. Yet there we were. Yeah, no, 100%. Just as an aside, 100%, totally can see it, makes perfect sense. The game went as much as you might expect. Early on, Jacob and Robbie Joe worked out a system where the 2 of them would signal with their eyes where the switch might be hidden. Jacob was an all-star athlete, and even then, as a child, he was much stronger and faster than the rest of us. Several times during the early rounds, he chased down Johnny Wads and striped him as if he'd stolen something of value from Jacob's mother. Another round saw Robbie Joe hem Arnold in by the barbed wire, and when Arnold tried to leap the wire and escape, he became entangled and was whipped until he could free his ankle from the rusty snare of wire. Me? I stayed within 5 feet of the base at all times. I was neither fast nor strong, but I was smart enough to know I had no desire to be whipped bloody on a hot summer day just because I had nothing else to do. I was quite confident in my abilities and my intelligence. All I had to do was stay close to the base and resolve myself to the fact that I would not be the one handing out the pain, and I was sure to avoid the whole mess without a scrape. Man proposes. An angry redneck with a beating stick disposes. During one of the latter rounds, Johnny Wads was trying to desperately run back to base with Jacob hot on his heels. Every time he swung the switch, you could hear it cut through the air, that swoosh, swoosh, that promised not just a sharp jolt of pain, but a bloody ribbon down your back. We had been at this for hours now, and most of my friends looked like they had been engaged in jungle warfare. There were bits of grass and leaves in their hair, brambles and dirt stains on their jeans, and not a single one without a red and bloody streak across their back. By this point, I had grown comfortable in my ability to dash that short expanse back to safety. I had yet to taste the burning kiss of the switch on my skin, and was almost sure I would avoid any harm that day. When Johnny Wad neared the base, a thick poplar tree that grew in one corner of the field, he had Jacob right on his heels, and I, thinking myself clever, stepped to the side. In my head, this would work out something like from a Looney Tunes picture. The 2 of them would blow by me, and Jacob would be so focused on Johnny Wad that I wouldn't even be worthy of notice. They were barreling towards me, the switch slicing the air behind Johnny Wad, and I saw Jacob's startling blue eyes flick upwards and catch mine. his trajectory changing minutely in mid-stride. Fuck. Oh, fuck. No. No. My brain screamed at me to move, but I was a tall and gangly young man, and being fleet of foot had never been one of my better attributes. I turned just as Johnny Wad blew by me, and I was reaching for the rough bark of the tree. My fingertips had just made contact with the rough texture of the bark when I felt fire bloom across my back, and a pain like I had never known raced down my spine and into my legs, which were promptly reduced to jello beneath me. I tumbled face first into the ground right in front of the tree, and Jacob was already on me, striking at the back of my legs with a series of wild, quick blows that tore screams out of my throat. I had only one hope, a single salvation in this mad hillbilly game that surely had been devised by some ancient demon. I had to crawl. By the time I had all but collapsed upon the gnarled roots of the old poplar tree, I was bleeding through the back of my shirt, and my legs felt as if they were on fire. Jacob was all but rolling with laughter, as were the others. I'd avoided getting caught up in the actual switch part of the game for the majority of the day, and now my comeuppance had arrived. I edged my way up against the tree, and though I sniffled, I didn't cry. The pain was bad, but the riding I would have gotten from the other boys in the neighborhood had I cried would have been much worse. We'd been playing for a while, though, now, and now the sun was beginning to descend behind the squat, fat mountains of our Appalachian home, and the sky had slipped into the pinkish purple that only really seems to exist in the memories of summer. This, at least, provided me with something that might have looked like an out. Uneasily, I rose to my feet. I think I'm gonna go eat, guys, I told the gang, hoping they could not tell how badly I wanted to cry each time my shirt settled against the flesh of my back. "Pussy, boys! Pussy!" Leaving just after getting caught one time, Jacob Lee said, then paused, and with a cruel grin added, "I'm just kidding. I did sort of beat the hell out of him," was all he could manage before he fell into laughter. "Oh, don't go home. You barely hurt," Drobby Joe chimed in, as if the one time he'd been caught during the game he hadn't made a strange, high, squealing sound like a pig waking up beside Tom Arnold. "Cry? Who the fuck is crying? Fuck you, I'm fine. Didn't even feel that shit. I'm just hungry." I very much wanted to cry, and very much had felt every blow, but therapy bills were a problem for my future self. By the time I made it home, my mother was waiting for me. Not only had I not left a note letting her know where I was gone off to when she got in from work, I was now arriving looking as if I had gotten into a cage fight with Wolverine. The back of my legs had begun to bleed and soak through my jeans, and my white t-shirt had almost nearly gone completely red in the back. "You look like someone drug you behind a horse," my mother all but yelled at me as I staggered through the door. The yelling was all worry, and after a generous portion of my hide removed, I don't think that I had any fear in me. I understood the dismay, because not only was there the motherly quality, no mother wants to see their child hurt, but there was also the ever-present threat that if hurt, I would have to go to the emergency room. Medical expenses were a real threat to our family, and getting hurt, or getting in a situation where you might be hurt, even if it was just a broken arm or a sprained ankle, could do real damage to my family. Sidebar, feeling that one. Absolutely. That was a similar sort of thing. I mean, in my own childhood, not to detract from this, but like I know when I was a kid, my appendix ruptured. If I'd gone to sleep that night, I would be dead. I know that was a thing that hit real hard for my family at the time. I feel that sort of thing. And I mean, you know, hey, look at our shared capitalist hellscape that we're in. Some things never get old. I explained the game the best I could, as she tended to me with cotton swabs and a bottle of alcohol. The wounds on my legs were shallow, red, toothless mouths, and they stung beyond reckoning. Talking helped, as she patiently went from cut to cut. But when she finally peeled my shirt over my head and exposed the laceration on my back, which was nearly 2 feet long, she hauled me around to face her. My mother was not a big or intimidating lady. She was only 5'4", and might have weighed 120 pounds if you poured a bucket of water over her head and filled her pockets with sand first. She did, however, have these green eyes that would all but fill with a generous dose of Appalachian fire when she was angry or wished to make a point. Fuck around and find out eyes to you kids today. If I ever catch you doing something like that again, I will lock you up and throw away the key. What if it had been your face? What if it had been your eyes? My mom had worked as a trauma nurse in the ER when she was younger, and the stuff she saw there always haunted her. Even the slightest bit of bleeding from me provoked a low panic. This was a 2-foot-long gash that ran from between my shoulders and down my spine. I lost a week of my summer to grounding, and spent most of that time sleeping on my stomach. This was just part of our summers, just one of those things we did because we were poor and there was nothing else to do. It wasn't the wildest, and certainly not the most life-threatening. We did eventually steal a new basketball from the wealthier kids on the other side of the train tracks, and it illustrates that no matter how old you are, one of the first things to break down when money runs out, it's always the rules. And note of tune into part 2, The Cog Machine, in which we explore what happens when the young and undereducated try and find jobs in a place where white collar is on the shirt you wear for Sunday best and special occasions. That one I'm going to hold off on. My original intention was actually to read through all 3 of these, and then one more. But this is actually these are taking more time than I thought it would take for me to read them out loud. Not a problem in the slightest. It just means I'm going to have to do a part 2 of this. But there is one more I very, very desperately want to actually read. So let me go ahead. Let's move ahead. Bam. Okay. So, this one actually is what spurred the idea on to sit and read this, because, So, a few weeks ago, J.D. Vance came into the limelight in American politics as being the VP choice for a certain orange shit gibbon. This was not the first time I'd heard of Vance. There are several times in conversations with our dear writer here where he had very eloquently expressed his thoughts on the hillbilly wannabe motherfucking piece of shit. And so, when I saw that he had written a new dispatch regarding Mr. Vance, I knew this was going to be a treat, and I was not disappointed. And this is one I very desperately wanted to share. I highly recommend take the time. Again, I'm going to link the 3 of these, and just a general to his. Actually, I don't know if I'll do the specific 3. I'll probably list the 3 that are read, but I'll do an actual link to his Medium page. I highly encourage you, go through, read this one at your pace, share the link for it, because oh god, this one's good. Okay. The Appalachian Paean, a mountain-born hatred of J.D. Vance. Those of us with some degree of experience when it comes to writing about American politics are rarely surprised. Often saddened, sometimes amused, but rarely ever surprised. Thus, I must tip my hat to former president and current walking specter of democracy's grim death, Donald J. Trump, for doing, seemingly, the impossible. He has, with the selection of J.D. Vance as his vice presidential pick, now moved to the top of my prayer list. Long live Donald J. Trump, I say, and may he never grow so infirm that he can no longer hold the office of the presidency in the immediate hellish future. I know, as a liberal, it is difficult to sing the praises, or wish anything but the most inglorious of ends, of a man whose most redeeming quality is his near indistinguishability from an orange Halloween-themed garbage bag filled with raw chicken and weasels. Since the news broke, I've struggled with it myself. The very underpinnings of my goddamn reality have been torn asunder, like so many pages of hillbilly elegy used to line the cages of guinea pigs, plagued by IBS, messy parrots, and Steve Bannon's prison cell. Up is down, black is white, and the gates of hell itself have opened, through which has stepped a man that even ChatGPT won't plagiarize. J.D. fucking Vance. What follows is a picture of J.D. Vance, aptly captioned, "Do I have to poop?" You know, Coyote fam, there was a time when if you told me that Donald J. Trump could possibly find anyone more racist, homophobic, and genuinely unfuckable than Mike Pence, I would have laughed at you. Not a giggle, not a smirking chuckle. A full-blown, knee-slapping horse laugh, followed by a cry of bullshit before weeping over the fact that Trump hadn't been abducted by aliens to serve in some manner of extraterrestrial zoo. The Trumpus shitgibbonus. Catchy, isn't it? Yet here we are, with J.D. fucking Vance now serving as the running mate for Donald J. Trump in his bid to oust Joe Biden and plunge America into what can politely be described as a, quote, fuck-to-death wasteland of narcissism, greed, hate, and stupidity, end quote. J.D. fucking Vance, who rose to political prominence after writing an exploitative book about the people of Appalachia, and then promptly turned around and voted every chance he got to stick it to America's poorest people. Well, Bubba, I'm afraid that dog won't hunt. As a quick note, this was written before Biden dropped out of the race. So, this is the Dispatches from Appalachia. I'm Coyote Wallace. I, the reader, am Sigh. Hello. And today, we shall examine J.D. fucking Vance in all his junior Red Skull henchman glory. Buckle up, strap in, pour a glass from your The Kids Are Gone stash of red wine, and smoke 'em if you got 'em. There will be profanity. James David Vance, formerly James Hamill, whose real name is James Donald Bowman. However, the name Vance is synonymous with Appalachian folk heroes and rebels like Jim Vance of Hatfield and McCoy fame, what a coincidence, was born on August 2nd, 1984 in Middletown, Ohio. He graduated from Middletown High School in 2004. After graduating, Vance went on to join the Marines and bravely served his country as a public affairs man in the 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing, valiantly defending his fellow soldiers from reporters, cameramen, and other undesirable elements. After his time in the service, Vance attended Ohio State University, graduated with a bachelor's degree in political science, and studied at the knee of Republican Senator Bob Schuler. Schuler was an old hand at regional politics, and had steadily won re-elections throughout 94, 96, and 98, until finally being forced out by imposed term limits. Vance proved a receptive and quick study to Schuler's old-style politics, and he writes fondly of Schuler in his memoirs, Hillbilly Elegy, calling him, quote, a kind and good man whose politics I liked, end quote. After graduating, Vance went on to attend the prestigious Yale Law School. Here, during his very first year, a professor encouraged him to write his memoirs. That professor, just in case anyone needs to know who to blame, was Amy Chua of Tiger Mom fame. The book that Vance went on to write was Hillbilly Elegy, and it served to catapult him upwards towards his future political ambitions. What follows is a picture of Amy Chua with a caption, "Why would you ever do that?" Right here. This is the spot. This is where J.D. Vance became repugnant to me. First, as a simple matter of clarity to our readers, I would like to point out that Middletown, Ohio is not part of Appalachia. I would also like to point out that the term hillbilly is a derogatory name used to reference those who live in rural Appalachia, and it carries a very strong negative connotation. A hillbilly is a simple, often barefoot, always poor, lazy, and myopic in his worldview. J.D. Vance wrote a memoir about a place he is not from, about a people he does not know, and then, when he rose to power in the Senate, having profited from his tale, decided to vote against every measure to improve the lives of the poor in this country. I will not go into the specifics of Senator Vance's book. To do so would require quoting the damn thing, and if I quote it, there is a distinct possibility that my hands will go into open rebellion. Once they have seceded from the United Coyote Anatomy, they will surely pluck out my own goddamn eyes. Honestly, that book should come with some manner of warning label. I'm still hopeful that we can use it to bring down AI by feeding it to the machine, causing it to fall into an endless loop of trying to bash its own brains in with a thesaurus and an optimistic little twinkle in its eye. No, I will simply summarize the message inside. The people of Kentucky, West Virginia, Lower Pennsylvania, East Tennessee, and all other regions of Appalachian coal country are not to be held in high regard. Our values, our work ethic, our very way of life are depicted as lending themselves towards drugs, despair, and doom. The text itself, offensively titled as it is, has been criticized by many Appalachians, including famed economist and West Virginia native William Easterly, who may have sharper words for Vance than even I do. Quote, sloppy analysis of collections of people, coastal elites, flyover America, Muslims, immigrants, people without college degrees, you name it, has become routine, and it's killing our politics. What follows is a picture of this piece of shit. By which I mean the book, not the writer, J.D. Vance. Thank you, Mr. Easterly, my apologies. That is a very eloquent way of saying that a man is a lying sack of shit. I loathe a stereotype. I loathe it when people use them against people of color. I loathe the stereotype when people use it against my LGBTQ brothers and sisters. I loathe it most, though, when some snot-nosed Ohio punk uses a stereotype to line his pockets and prop up his shitty political career. This man's false persona was created to appeal to the working-class poor, yet he has never been one of us. His name, his story, his very Axe body spray scented douchebaggery is all a carefully constructed facade. Is the poverty rate high in Appalachia? You're damn skimpy it is. Does that mean we are lazy or uneducated? Not at all. What follows is a picture of, it's a political cartoon of stereotypical hillbilly. With a caption, last people that it's culturally acceptable to make stereotypes about, and neither the left nor the right care. I grew up poor, just like Vance says he did. Raised by a single mother and a grandmother, who were two of the hardest working women that God ever put on this earth. Both of them were college educated. No one paid their way in either. They did it themselves with hard work and grit. The woman who taught me to read and love books could have put J.D. Vance down the road with his tail tucked between his legs like a yellow dog. And my grandmother, bless your heart, J.D. Vance. Someone, perhaps a well-meaning citizen or alumni of Yale, should let them know that they're doing a piss-poor job of teaching their students how to do proper research. Maybe, just maybe, even the Tiger Mom couldn't teach J.D. Vance not to be so pig-fucking stupid as to write a book and make a shitty movie that disparages a people and their culture while we have access to this glorious thing called the internet. Appalachia is home to famed poets like James Still, Jim Wayne Miller, Crystal Wilkinson, and Gurney Norman. These mountains, whose people you mock, are also the home of Charles Frazier, Frank X. Walker, Hunter S. Thompson, Wilma Dykeman, and Sharon McCrum. And those are just the ones who are better at the craft of literature, you miserable dumb bastard. Shall I go on? I think I shall. What about famed phylogeneticist Vicky Funk? Maybe you'd prefer Jeremy Bradford Cook Johnson and his accolades as a paleobiologist. Class, give Senator Vance a moment to look up what a phylogeneticist and paleobiologist mean. I know it's wrong to make assumptions about people whom we have never met, especially about their intelligence and work ethic. But since the good senator has been so obliging on that account already, I see no harm. Now that Senator Vance has had a chance to catch up with the rest of us, we can move on. And that is a bit, by the way. We all know J.D. Vance isn't going to read this, because we all read his book. Jesus Christ. He must give the best blowjobs in modern literature. I have no other explanation for how he got published. None. Zero. He must have a technique that would shame Nancy Reagan. A ball-fondling technique is always important when publishing absolute bullshit as nonfiction. So I hear anyway. I have, on more than one occasion, used these dispatches to lament the sorry state that King Cole left our region in. Broken men, their backs bent from years of underground labor, and their lungs full of black dust seem to be our most pronounced product. Our schools are underfunded, our people made sick by runoff and tainted drinking water, and both the past of the Appalachian people and their future are slowly being erased. You see, I could forgive J.D. Vance for using our people to make money. Appalachians have long been exploited and used by those that would make caricatures of the people who call these mountains home. Many of us have long since learned to turn the other cheek, take the jokes with a grain of salt, and some of us will even play up to a tourist if it suits our needs. This makes hillbilly elegy an offensive, but ultimately inconsequential waste of a good tree. What I cannot forgive, what I shall not forgive, is that Senator Vance never lifted a finger to help those whom he wrote so unfairly about. His Senate career could be best described as that of a greedy piglet, squirming as hard as it can to get to the teat of the Republican Party and fill his little piggy tummy up with hog's milk, which by hog's milk I mean lucrative donations and political support. Senator Vance, for all his talking about work ethic, seems to have done almost next to nothing to improve the lives of anyone. We hillbillies watch out for our own people, Mr. Vance. We shovel the snow out of driveways of our elderly. We watch out when we see someone snooping around our neighbors' houses. And if one of us has a nice big pool or basketball hoop, we let the damn community use it. You'd know things like that if you actually spend any time in the places you talk down about, sir. In 2016, J.D. Vance opened Our Ohio Renewal, with the organization's stated intention being to address the social ills that plagued Ohio. These ills, of course, included poverty, crime, and addiction. Despite generous donations, Our Ohio Renewal shuttered within about 2 years without accomplishing a single stated goal. What he did manage to do, as brought to light by his 2022 Democratic rival, Tim Ryan, was use the organization to further his political ambitions. What follows is a picture of downtown Cincinnati. The caption, "Here we see where J.D. Vance lived and grew up. Middletown is definitely not Appalachia." Truth. J.D. Vance, a classy man of fine literary distinction, had been using addiction recovery services to poll prospective voters. This, by itself, is merely disgusting. But when you factor in that the lone accomplishment Vance stated his organization had, sending Dr. Sally Sattel to the Appalachian region for a year-long residency, was tainted by involvement with the American Enterprise Institute and Purdue Pharma, where Dr. Sattel provided Purdue with information on patients in exchange for payments to AEI. Classy move, Vance. Takes a real special guy to have the lack of moral fiber needed to sell fiction as nonfiction while still having just enough dingy, piss-yellow soul left to sell out to Big Pharma. Maybe I'm wrong and he really is Appalachian. We could be looking at Mitch McConnell's bastard son. Of course, one should not be surprised at Vance's lack of any basic human decency, for you only have to look back at the super PAC that funded his rise to power to gauge his trajectory. The Protect Ohio Values Project, funded to the tune of $10 million by Peter Thiel and spearheaded by fundraising whiz kid Nathaniel Morris, was designed to prop up candidates who held views in line with a certain breed of American, mostly the white, straight, male gun owner type. Unfortunately, Protect Ohio Values would soon find itself at the center of a complaint by the Campaign Legal Center for illegal in-kind contributions to J.D. Vance in the form of polling data, voter targeting information, and draft campaign communications that Protect Ohio Values provided, free of charge, to Vance's campaign via an obscure website hidden from the general public. The complaint further alleges that Vance's campaign knowingly accepted these in-kind contributions and used the materials to further Vance's candidacy, including by producing a campaign ad based on the Protect Ohio Values script. Some mighty fine company you keep, Senator Vance. Now, don't let the company that J.D. Vance keeps give you the impression he's merely rolling in mud and that the stench can be washed off. Vance isn't just the product of keeping poor company. He is the goddamn poor company. J.D. Vance, despite being elected to public office, aligns with the Dark Enlightenment movement. This movement, like many right-wing fringe groups, believes that the United States government is run by liberal elites and is therefore ripe for dismantling. He's described Curtis Yarvin, the creator of red pill culture, as a major ideological influence. Vance has openly acknowledged this, stating, quote, I think Curtis Yarvin's monarchy ideas are bonkers, but you know what? He's absolutely onto something real with his concept of the cathedral and the nature of the fight, or with his concept of the cathedral, end quote, and quote, the nature of the fight in front of us now is such that we can't afford to be over prissy about our allies, end quote. What follows is a picture, I'm presuming, of Curtis Yarvin. I am cursed with this visual. Curtis Yarvin, captioned, Curtis Yarvin contemplating if his penis really is that small or if everyone is just lying to him. Honestly, I could see that being the case. Not his penis, him contemplating that. His penis is almost certainly that small. You know what's really not Appalachian? Fascism. Especially fascism cooked up in a back room by the two least popular guys on the Women Are Ruining Star Wars subreddit. J.D. Vance, being as he has no soul and is a, unconfirmed, vaguely human-shaped bag of rats, takes positions that you might expect from someone whose moral integrity could be bought for less than a cup of coffee. Abortion, for example, is one of his favorite topics to rail against. According to J.D. Vance, even in cases of rape or incest, a woman should not be allowed to have an abortion. To allow a woman to have an abortion in cases of rape or incest, Vance argues, would be akin to saying that two wrongs make a right, which he considers more important than women's health. Vance clearly feels strongly about this, as he has gone on record saying that abortion is a heinous act on par with the keeping of slaves. I don't even have a joke for that beyond just screaming fuck until my throat gives out. Then again, given the other positions that J.D. Vance holds on matters concerning our country, one might find his stance on abortion downright tame. Not only does J.D. Vance advocate for the dissolution of gay marriage, but he also supports making any form of gender-affirming care for minors a felony crime. Especially for LGBTQ+ individuals, Vance's beliefs imply support for tearing them away from their loved ones. He disregards the proven benefits of gender-affirming care and openly advocates for reverting American marriage laws to one man and one woman. On behalf of the LGBTQ+ community, on behalf of all the parents who teach their children to embrace their true selves, and on behalf of every American who stands against bigotry and discrimination, you have no right to decide who deserves happiness. I know a resilient 22-year-old lesbian who works tirelessly over 40 hours a week to care for her beloved fiancé. Who are you to dictate whom they can love and build a life with? Sidebar, as the reader here, I'm going to throw out my own. I know an absolutely fucking badass woman, herself having gone through a long journey trans. I hope I'm using the term correctly. I'm sorry on that. In any event, I know a really badass woman who has gone through fucking hell I'm certain, for any number of things that she has had to deal with, and she is fucking amazingly intelligent and one of the people that I have always had a deep and abiding respect for her. And this pile of horse shit wants to say her existence is invalid. He can go fuck himself with a chainsaw. Continuing with the fucking reading. Sir, I no longer question your understanding of Appalachia. I question whether you should seek shelter from the rain, lest you drown gazing open-mouthed at the sky. Senator Vance, in Appalachia, we would label you a snake if you had even a shred of humanity left. We would label you a snake. If you have even a shred of humanity left, acknowledge that the deaths of every young person denied gender-affirming care rest squarely on your shoulders. Your willingness to pander to fascists and monsters for political gain is despicable. Do you possess any decency or integrity at all? Where is it? Weren't you a Marine? How can you claim Appalachian roots without any honor, sir? As if that weren't appalling enough, J.D. Vance has publicly advocated for women to remain in domestic violence situations. He blames the decline of the modern American marriage on the sexual revolution, suggesting that women can discard husbands as easily as changing underwear whenever they feel unhappy. My mother escaped from not one but two very abusive relationships. She was nearly killed escaping the first one, and when I was 16 years old, I once held her, ribs broken, as we awaited the police. Almost every child raised in Appalachia has a story about a parent, a sibling, a relative, or a friend who has been the victim of domestic violence. Sidebar as a writer, same. They're individuals, family, and close friends, other people that I deeply respect. I'm not going to go into their stories. That's not my place to fucking do. But you guys are sane. It is known what you guys fucking went through. And again, this pile of fucking shit. Continuing. You would tell anyone to stay where they're beaten. Let me tell you what my mother, Sheila Johnson, would have told you. She would have stepped up to you, eyes burning green, at 5'4" and 120 pounds of nothing but determination and grit, and told you that your own mother would be ashamed of you. We can argue gun control, we can debate healthcare and border policy, but let's be very clear, Senator Vance. Very clear. If you believe in a just God, you are damned for your position. No one who loves another can raise their hand to that person, and there is no room for party politics on this matter. If you have children of your own, I am woefully sorry for their fortunes. For any father who would sell his daughter, or who would tell his daughter to stay with a man who hit her, is no father at all. Shame on you, sir. Follows a picture. Emma Gatewood could and would kick J.D. Vance's ass. Shame on you, J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance's positions on various typical conservative issues are largely what you would expect. More guns, less aid for Ukraine, and despite the steadily rising temperature that promises to boil us all to death, climate change remains a fiction concocted by liberals to scare the world. Here, amongst the filth, Vance seems almost commonplace. But that was not always so. At the beginning of the 2016 election, Trump's new vice presidential pick was an outspoken critic of everyone's favorite rotisserie chicken-skinned politician. He even went so far as to call Donald Trump, quote, cultural heroin, end quote, and decried his policies as ranging from immoral to downright absurd. He even, in a remarkable display of honesty, called Donald J. Trump the American Hitler, which, now that I think about it, probably explains why Vance was so eager to join up. We all thought that Vance was decrying Trump, when actually calling Trump the new Hitler, cultural heroin, and absolutely immoral were all actually compliments. Trump loves the idea of being the new Hitler. He is thrilled for his name to be held in the same regard as smack. And absurdly immoral is literally Trump's campaign promise. Actually, that's far too generous a take. What really happened was that J.D. Vance fell to his knees before Trump, groveled, renounced his past statements, and applied the same dedication to winning Trump over that he must have applied to his first publisher. I'm told Trump was thrilled to finally know what Putin felt like whenever he visited, and that he no longer misses Stormy Daniels quite so badly. This leads me to my final point about J.D. Vance, the last bit of evidence that disqualifies him from claiming the title of Appalachian. For some of you, this will be easy to understand, and for others, it may seem crazy or far-fetched. However, I have lived here all my life, and I feel that I have a fairly strong sense of the pulse of this region. I know the people, I know the culture, I know the history, and most of all, I know how to make my own goddamn cornbread. We Appalachians have been many things. We have been bootleggers, outlaws, Union freedom fighters, coal miners, homemakers, mothers, sisters, fathers, brothers, strong, weak, brave, cowardly, fools, and scholars. But do you know what we have never been, J.D. Vance? Do you know what the men on Blair Mountain refused to do, even when they were told they would be bombed, machine-gunned, and gassed? Have you any conception of the quality or merit of the people whose dignity you walk so carelessly across? A picture relating to... I don't want to wind up killing the flow of me reading through this. My apologies. It definitely seems to be relating to Air Fleet order to West Virginia battlefield. I'm guessing this relates to the Blair Mountain one. I apologize for being a uneducated lout. I am continuing. We do not side with gun thugs, coal barons, and wicked men at the expense of our honor. We do not surrender, change sides, and join in the revelry of the destruction of our own. Whatever claim to honor, decency, and goodness your service in the Marines may have bestowed upon you is tarnished by your groveling and your flip-floppery. The moment you turned around, and for the sake of your own pocket and career, joined with that man who you knew to be evil, you became no different than the quislings who once betrayed France to the Nazis, or the scabs that would come to our state and steal food from the mouths of hungry miners. J.D. Vance, you may have been named Trump's vice president, but I have another name for you, sir. A name that is far more fitting, far more in step with your alignments, allegiances, and past associations. I name you a craven, sir. Now get on back across that river, Buckeye, and speak not my people's names again. You've not the tenacity, nor the capacity, to claim this land as your own. You are not one of us, and I highly doubt you are one of, and I highly doubt you are of any people. May the money keep you warm in hell. Just make sure you don't take a seat near me. Stay weird, America. Also, a final note, which I totally encourage going to. It's a link to his Ko-Fi to tip appropriately if you are able to. Always only if you are able. And just goddamn, I love that article. Reading through it again, actually doing so out loud. God, I fucking love that. That is an awesome one. Like, legitimately. Hands down. Phenomenally written. And like I had said before, I knew this was going to be a hell of a read just from previous conversations I had had with him prior to this coming out. But, so yeah, this has been, what is it now, my fourth one of Some Idiot Reads. Hey, back after 2 weeks and a personal hellscape that is work. Hopefully it will not be... Not even hopefully. It shouldn't be 2 more weeks for the next one. I'm going to try and get this as a weekly thing going out. I might be tired, but I'm not going to be, that dead. And I really enjoy reading these. I did not realize the Cog Machine, the one Cogs in the Machine, that first one, I had actually read that one before. That is the one of those that I had read. I had not gotten the other ones. And that's an additional thing. I want to read the rest of them. I'm fucking loving these. By all means, again, I will include a link in the description to the Medium page, as well as the Ko-Fi. Fuck it. I'm going to toss it in there too. If you enjoy his work, go read it. Give it some, I don't know, what does Medium do? Is it applause? Medium gives it claps. Give it a clap. Give it some engagement. Check out the other stuff that he has written. Binge your way through it, or just wait until next week when I do some more. As long as he doesn't wind up coming at me after he sees this and then is like, oh my God, please shut the fuck up. Do not keep my words out of your filthy mouth, which, that's fair. It's cool. I'm being way overly hard on myself. But all right. Unlike with Project 2025, where there was a lot of commentary that I was engaging in, this is just having a good time. So yeah, that's all I got for this week. Again, he has got work coming out here in the near future from Nightmare Press. It is going to be American Mystic, starring a character, Jimmy Wonderful, who is a character. Very much looking forward to that. I will, once that actually does get published and is out there and available, I am absolutely giving a shout out to that and posting a link. So yeah. All right. I'm going to go ahead and call it here. Have a good evening and always take care of yourselves. I feel like now I had something more I was going to say and then I lost it. I love you guys. Later.